I just get my phone so I can read from the phone.
Oh, yes. So we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, second canto, chapter 10, verse 37 to 40. And we'll wait for the guests to come.
For the book, okay.
To 10:37. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. 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 Narayana Namaskritya Naram Jaiva Narutanam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayat Katirayi. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, friendship, first offer his humble obeisances to Narayan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, to Narayan Rishi, the supremest human being, to Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and to Srila Vyasadeva, the author. So I think we'll do verse for verse, like corresponds.
Sounds great.
Not first word by word. Prajapatim manum devam.
Prajapati manum deva.
Rishin pitri ganam pritak.
Rishin pitru ganan pritak.
Siddhacharana Gandharvan.
Siddhacharana Gandharvan.
Vidyashrasura Guyakan.
Vidyadrasura Guyakan.
Prajapati manum devam.
Prajapati manum deva.
Rishin pitri ganam pritak.
Rishin pitru ganan pritak.
Siddhacharana Gandharvan.
Siddhacharana Gandharvan.
Vidyadrasura Guyakan.
Vidyadrasura Guyakan.
Kinarapsara Sonagan.
Kinarapsaranagan.
Sarpan Kim Purushan Naran.
Sarvan Kim Purushan Naran.
Matri Raksha Pishachamscha.
Matra Rakshas Pishachamscha.
Preta Bhuta Vinayakan.
Preta Bhuta Vinayakan.
Kinarapsara Sonagan.
Kinarapsara Sonagan.
Sarpan Kim Purushan Naran.
Sarpan Kim Purushan Naran.
Matri Raksha Pishachamscha.
Matra Rakshas Pishachamscha.
Preta Bhuta Vinayakan.
Preta Bhuta Vinayakan.
Kushmandon Madhavetalan.
Kushmandonam Vetalam.
Yatudanan Grahanapi.
Yatudhanam Grahanapi.
Kagamrikan Pashumbrikshan.
Kagandrikam Pashundriksham.
Girinripana Sarishripan.
Girinripa Sarishripan.
Kusmandon Madhavetalan.
Kushmandon Madhavetalam.
Yatudanan Grahanapi.
Yatudhanam Grahanapi.
Kagamrikan Mrigan Pashun Vrikshan
Kagan Pashun Vrikshan
Girindripa Sarishripan
Girindripa Sarishripan
Vividas Chadurvidyayni
Vividhas Chaturvidhayanya
Jalasthalana Paukasha
Jalastalana Bokasha
Kushala Kushala Mishra
Kushala Kushala Mishra
Karmanam Gatayastrima
Karmanam Gatayastrima
Vividas Chaturvidayni
Vividhas Chaturvidhayanya
Jalastalana Bokasha
Jalastalana Bokasha
Kushala Kushala Mishra
Kushala Kushala Mishra
Karmanam Gatayastima
Karmanam Gatayastrima.
Anyone else?
I think Dira Govinda once did this situation like anyone else, but only one verse.
What do we want? We can continue. I don't know.
All four. Okay. Prajapati Manum Devam
Prajapati Manum Devam
Rishin Pitru Gunam Pritak
Rishim Pitri Ganam Pritak
Siddhacharana Gandharvan
Siddhacharana Gandharvan
Vidyadhra Sura Guyakam
Vidyadra Sura Guhyakam
Kinarab Sarasonagam
Kinarap Sarasonagam
Sarpam Kim Purushanaram
Sarpam Kim Purushanaram
Matra Raksha Pishachamscha
Matri Raksha Pishachamscha
Preta Bhuta Vinayakam
Preta Bhuta Vinayakam
Kushmandon Madhavetalam
Kushmandamada Vetalam
Yatudhanam Grahanapi
Yatudanam Grahanapi
Khagan Mrigan Pashun Vriksham
Kagan Mrigan Pasum Vriksham
Girim Nirpa Sarishpripam
Giri Nripa Sarishripam
Vividha Chaturvidhainya
Vividhachatu Vidyanye
Jalastala Nabokasa
Javastala Nabokasa
Kushala Kushala Mishra
Kushala Kushala Vishra
Karmanam Gatayastvima
Karmanam Gatayastima
Prajapati
Prajapati
Brahma and his sons like Daksha and others.
Brahma and his sons like Daksha and others.
Manu, the periodical heads like Vaivasvata Manu.
The periodical heads like Vivasvata Manu.
Devan, like Indra, Chandra and Varuna.
Like Indra, Chandra and Varuna.
Rishin, like Brigu and Vasishta.
Like Brigu and Vashishta.
Pitriganam, the inhabitants of the Pitta planets.
The inhabitants of the Pitta planets. Pritak,
separately. Sita, the inhabitants of the Siddha planet.
The inhabitants of the Siddha planet.
Charana, the inhabitants of the Charana planet.
The inhabitants of the Charana planet.
Gandharvan, the inhabitants of the Gandharva planets.
The inhabitants of the Gandharva planets.
Vidyadhara, the inhabitants of the Vidyadhara planet.
The inhabitants of the Vidyadhara planet.
Asura, the atheists. Guyakan, the inhabitants of the Yaksha planet.
The inhabitants of the Yaksha planet.
Kinara, the inhabitants of the Kinara planet.
The inhabitants of the Kinara planet.
Apsarasa, the beautiful angels of the Apsara planet.
The beautiful angels of the Apsara planet.
Nagan, the serpentine inhabitants of Nagaloka.
The serpentine inhabitants of the Nagaloka.
Sarpam, the inhabitants of Sarpaloka.
The inhabitants of
Sarpaloka snakes.
Kimpurushan, the monkey-shaped inhabitants of the Kimpurusha planet.
The monkey-shaped inhabitants of the Kimpurusha planet.
Naran, the inhabitants of earth.
The inhabitants of earth.
Matri, the inhabitants of Matriloka.
the inhabitants of Matriloka,
Raksha,
Raksha,
the inhabitants of the demoniac planet.
the inhabitants of the demoniac planet,
Pishachan,
Pishachan,
the inhabitants of the Pishachaluka.
the inhabitants of Pishachaloka,
Cha,
Cha,
also
also
Preta,
Preta,
the inhabitants of Pretaloka.
the inhabitants of Pretaloka,
Uta,
Bhuta,
the evil spirits.
the evil spirits,
Vinayakan,
Vinayaka,
the goblins.
the goblins,
Kushmanda,
Kushmanda,
will of the wisp.
below the wisp,
Unmada,
Unmada,
lunatics.
lunatics,
Vetalan,
Vetalam,
the jinn.
the Jinn,
Yatudanan,
Yatudana,
a particular type of evil spirit.
a particular type of evil spirit,
Grahan,
Grahan,
the good and evil stars.
the good and evil stars,
Api,
Api,
also.
also
Kagan, the
Kagan,
birds.
the birds,
Brigan,
Brigan,
the forest animals.
the forest animals,
Pashun,
Pashun,
the household animals.
the household animals,
Vrikshan, the
Rikshan,
ghosts.
the ghosts,
Girin,
Green,
the mountains.
the mountains,
Nirpa,
Nirpa,
O king.
O king,
Sarishripan,
Sarishpan,
reptiles.
reptiles,
Vivida,
Vivida,
the moving and the standing living entities.
the moving and the standing living entities,
Chaturvida,
Chaturvidha,
living entities born from embryos, eggs, perspiration, and seeds.
living entities born from embryos, eggs, perspiration, and seeds.
Yeah,
Yeah,
others.
others,
Anya,
Anya,
all,
all,
Jala,
Jala,
water,
water,
Stala,
Stala,
land,
land,
Naba Ukasha,
Naba Okashta,
birds,
birds,
Kushala,
Kushala,
in happiness,
in happiness,
Akushala,
Akushala,
in distress,
in distress,
Mishra,
Mishra,
in mixed happiness and distress,
in mixed happiness and distress,
Karmanam,
Karmanam,
according to one's own past deeds,
according to one's path,
Kataya,
Kataya,
the result of
as a result of,
Tu, but,
but,
Ima,
Imam,
all of them.
all of them.
Translation. O King, know from me that all living entities are created by the Supreme Lord according to their past deeds. This includes Brahma and his sons like Daksha, the periodical heads like Vaivasvata Manu, the demigods like Indra, Chandra, and Varuna, the great sages like Trigu, Vyasa, and Vasishta, the inhabitants of Pitriloka and Siddhaloka, the Charanas, Gandharvas, Vidyadharas, Asuras, Yakshas, Kinnaras, and angels, the serpentines, the monkey-shaped Kinpurushas, the human beings, the inhabitants of Matriloka, the demon, Pishachas, ghosts, spirits, lunatics, and evil spirits, the good and evil stars, the goblins, the animals in the forest, the birds, the household animals, the reptiles, the mountains, the moving and standing living entities, the living entities born from embryos, from eggs, from perspiration, and from seeds, and all others, whether they be in the water, land, or sky, in happiness, in distress, or in mixed happiness and distress. All of them, according to their past deeds, are created by the Supreme Lord. And the purport by Srila Prabhupada. The varieties of living entities are mentioned in this list, and with no exception, from the topmost planet down to the lowest planet of the universe, all of them in different species of life are created by the Almighty Father Vishnu. Therefore, no one is independent of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord therefore claims all living entities as his offspring. In the following verse,
Sarvayonishu Konteya, Murtaya Sambhavantiya, Tasam Brahma Mahayonir, Aham Bija Pradapita.
the material nature is compared to the mother. Although every living being is seen to come out of the mother's body, it is still a fact that the mother is not the ultimate cause of such a birth. The father is the ultimate cause of birth. Without the father's seed, no mother can give birth to a child. Therefore, the living beings in different varieties of forms and positions within the innumerable universes are all born of the seeds of the Almighty Father, the personality of Godhead. And only to the man with a poor fund of knowledge they appear to be born of the material nature. Being under the material energy of the Supreme Lord, all living entities, beginning from Brahma down to the insignificant ant, are manifested in different bodies according to their past deeds. The material nature is one of the energies of the Lord. Bhagavad Gita 7:4. The material nature is inferior in comparison to the living entities, the superior nature. The superior nature and inferior nature of the Lord combine to manifest all universal affairs. Some of the living entities are relatively happy in better conditions of life, whereas others are in distressed conditions of life. But factually, none of them are actually happy in material conditional life. No one can be happy in prison life. Although one may be a first-class prisoner and another a third-class prisoner, the intelligent person should not try to be promoted from third-class prison life to first-class prison life, but should try to be released from the prison altogether. One may be promoted to first-class prisoner, but the same first-class prisoner is again degraded to a third-class prisoner in the next term. One should not try to be free from prison life and go. One should try to be free from prison life and go back home, back to Godhead. That is the real goal for all types of living entities. Om Jnana-timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshuram Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Svapadantike Padantika Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Kadakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavanscha Shri Rupam Sadrajata Saha Kanara Gunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadukam Parishana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Bhakta Kanjana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Krishnapanu Sutadevi Namani Hari Priye Panchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namo Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Rama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Putani Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nityananda Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Prajarini Nirvishesha Shunyavati Paschita Deshatari. So, time is up.
I said the class is over.
Any comments? Okay, so Vladini Shakti asked me to give class, and I didn't know the verse until yesterday evening, and I read it, and I thought this is funny. A whole list of living entities who lives in the universe. And I thought like, oh, I could speak about ghosts, I could speak about fairies, I could speak about goblins or angels. Angels, that would be nice, speak about angels. And then after I read the verse yesterday evening and we did our kirtan, I started to have like inspirations and insights, like what this verse contains, and it contains so much just by listing all these living entities. Because if we look at like the so here we hear about the creation of the universe, and if we look at like one universe has 14 planetary systems, so there are like 7 upper planetary systems, and then I think it's 6 lower planetary systems, and with Earth is a Bhumandala, that's like in the middle the middle, and the upper planetary systems, they're all like all the living entities exist on the subtle realm, and the lower planetary is the gross realm, and Mandala, where we are, that's there exists subtle and gross. And so it's a very, very special place we are. And so we hear that actually everywhere in each planet of the universe there is life, there are living entities. And later on in Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, and I think also 5, we get further descriptions of what it looks like on some of these planets. And also like how they worship God. They worship God in the form of Nrsimhadev or in Hayagriva, many other forms. And it's actually very unique that where we are, the planet that where we are, we worship the Lord God as Krishna in his original form. Of course, there are also other forms of God and the worship, but we have a chance here to get to meet Krishna or God in his original form. So as I was starting to feel a lot of appreciation for actually being here, like if I try to imagine one universe and all the different species, and it's just one it's described that one universe is like the seed of a mustard, like a mustard seed in a big bag of mustard seeds. So it's quite amazing that we have landed here, Bhumandala, planet Earth, and we get to hear about Krishna, we get to hear about the Maha Mantra, we get to hear about how to connect with God again. So there's so much in this verse I could speak about. What stood out for me is that we get, like the last sentence, we all get our bodies according to our past deeds. So I was thinking of the principle of responsibility. So we're responsible for being here. In chapter 13, we're studying chapter 13, and there's the verse which says we get our bodies according to our desires. So that's like they both go together. I got this body according to my past desires and also to my deeds. Like, so what I deserve from my deeds, and that the result is this body. And taking full responsibility means for me to accept that this body that I have is perfect for this life, for where my soul is. It's perfect for my self-realization. It's perfect for doing my service to God. And this, like in my life, this has been a big process from the moment I realized, I understood, like I was diagnosed with an autoimmune condition 11 years ago or 10 years ago. And that's when I woke up and I understood, oh, I consider my body my enemy. I realized that I hate my body. My body is just awful and terrible, and it gets in my way. And that was the beginning of a long journey of learning to accept this body is perfect and coming to a place of seeing my body as my best friend. And I actually see that more and more, that my body is my best friend, and the boundaries that my body has, they are actually protecting me to move too far away from God. Like my body is not made for too much sense gratification, which is it took me a long time to see that as a blessing. So that's what we hear in this verse, like every living, also you and the birds outside, like everyone has the perfect body for where they are at. And I thought it was funny when I mentioned to you, Ladini, I said, so I can be aware of my desires, and more I become aware of my desires, and I can like take a break and say, okay, do I really want this desire? I can say a prayer to Krishna. Please don't hear this desire. What about my deeds? I find that more difficult. When I was a child and I went to religion class, Christian religion class, and our teacher told us, like in very childlike language, when you do bad things, you get a black spot on your heart. So I was really, for me, that was shocking. Oh, I get a black spot. And or even a black hole, just something dark and horrible. And so I was very, very scared of doing bad things because my heart would get black spots. So what did I say this?
It's more difficult for you. The
deeds, yes. Yeah, so yeah, what we do and we get results, and sometimes it feels quite scary for me to hear what are the consequences of actions. And even if I don't want to do something bad, I still, like, I walk on the street and I kill animals. I breathe and I kill germs. So yeah. So that's about taking responsibility. And I was also reflecting, related to Bhagavad Gita, to the chapter 13, that there is one of these questions, what it means to be accountable, looking at the material creation, the material laws. So that matter has its own laws, material nature has its laws, and things happen, and I don't have control over them. I don't have control whether there is a war or not, or whether there is a natural catastrophe or not. I do have control, or I do have a choice when it comes to how I respond to this circumstances. And recently I've been thinking about that. For how long do I want to continue to respond to material nature? Like, do I want to continue this for many, many lifetimes, or maybe better endeavor to go back to God, where I don't need to respond to material nature. The material nature is also mentioned here. Material nature as the mother, and Vishnu as the father. And Srila Prabhupada writes, we don't have any independency. Either we're dependent on the mother or the father. We're dependent on material nature or God the Father. And I was contemplating on how much I endeavored to be independent. Like, I wanted to be independent from my parents. I wanted to be independent from finances. I want to be independent from what others think, and I want to be independent, and so much endeavor to be free and independent. And recently I noticed that's changing. I don't like this independence, and I understand that there's no it's like focus to want to be independent, and that actually true independence comes when I become dependent on God, dependent on Krishna and what His will, and then that's true. That's the true freedom. Because what I understand is that when I'm acting according to God's desire, or according to what pleases him, then I am also satisfied and I'm happy and I'm free. So I'm contemplating to change my desire for independence to, okay, independent from material nature, independent from Mother Nature, dependent on Father God. And material being dependent on matter, or it goes very, for me, it goes very close with being identifying with matter. And I just recently read Srila Prabhupada's small booklet on who is crazy. It was humorous to read for me, because it describes how we all belong to some party. So there's like either it's the nationality or the really like Christian or Muslim or Judaism or whatever, atheism. So it's always, we always want to belong to some party, and then one party calls the other party crazy, and the other party calls the one party crazy. So who is actually crazy? And I was just reading it. I was finding it so relevant for today. Like there's a new partyism about those who are vaccinated, those who are not vaccinated, and it's so wild, because those who are vaccinated think that those who are not are crazy, and those who are not think that those, and everyone tells, well, but you are going to die, you're crazy to do this, and then but you will not get, and then the vaccinated, they get sick, and it's just like this back forth, and then yeah, it's just like seems to be a tendency, like we always want to belong to some party, and we want to be right that we're not crazy and the others are crazy, and that's crazy.
Should I open?
I think one. Kannst du auch machen? Yeah, so who is crazy? What I understand Srila Prabhupada's conclusion is that like any identification with matter is crazy. So I found that interesting, because I grew up with I went to the Waldorf school, and in Waldorf school there's a lot of like goblins and fairies and angels. They are just like living, it's just normal, they exist, and we sing songs to them, and we would do rituals for them. And so I grew up with, this is normal, these beings exist. And at the same time, I noticed hardly anyone believed that they actually existed. And for me, they really existed. I wanted to see them, and I wanted to experience them. And at the same time, I had an uncle who was diagnosed with schizophrenia, and he could see those beings, but he was crazy. So I had a hard time to figure out, and reading this verse, the first time I read it some years ago, it was very healing for me to understand, okay, so here's this Srimad Bhagavatam, it's like the history of our universe, and it just takes it for, it describes, yeah, these beings, they exist, and there is nothing crazy about it. So these are my connections to crazy. Crazy. And what stood out for me also was that like some beings are in happiness, and some are in distress, and some are in mixed happiness and distress. And it reminded me of taking the seminars the first time in 2006, and I was quite very convinced that I'm happy, I should be happy. It's because I had everything that people want, and even I live in Switzerland, which is like such a special place. Like we have clean air and clean water. Even in the capital city of Switzerland, you can swim in the river and you can drink the water.
It's the land of chocolate.
Or chocolate or cheese. What could be better? So I should be happy. I have a nice partner. I have a nice family. I have a good job. I have money. I have a house. I should be very happy. And
You should.
I should be very happy. I was very happy. And then I took the seminars and I realized that I'm actually very miserable.
How come?
I don't know. So if I had read this verse before the seminar, distress, who is in distress? No, I'm happy. So I understood that I'm not happy. I'm like here, Prabhupada describes a prisoner. I was a first-class prisoner, maybe. And I thought I should be happy, but I wasn't. And it's normal, like if we identify with matter, and all our happiness is dependent on getting something external, which is not under our control anyway. So how can we be happy or relaxed or peaceful? It's constant distress. And it wasn't fun. It wasn't fun for me to become conscious. And it is not fun to be conscious unless we get Krishna conscious. To be conscious is so miserable. To be aware of like all the pain that we experience just in our body and the emotional pain we experience, and to see others in pain, and to see how we create our own suffering, and to see how the blind lead the blind, and it's painful. It's very painful, and to see how little control we have over anything really. So to have that consciousness without God in it, it's terrible. Then I don't want to be conscious without God in it. So yeah, when we become Krishna conscious, then life starts to get better, at least in my experience. The pain doesn't get less and the misery is not less. Actually, in fact, I'm more aware of it. At the same time, I have another perspective. I have a place where I know I want to go to this place of serving God with more and more love and devotion, and that's where I experience happiness and bliss, and that's what I want more of. What else do I want to say? I spoke about the planetary systems. For me, that is fascinating, the planetary systems, actually. And to read in Srimad Bhagavatam about the planetary systems.
Hare Krishna. Would somebody mind moving the computer closer? It's been a little hard to hear, and when you speak softer, then it's almost impossible to hear.
Okay.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, who's there? Is it and
Malini.
Malini? Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
So yeah, the planetary systems, what came to my mind related to that is that I read, it's actually like I was speaking about Bhumandala, where we are, where planet Earth is. That's a special place, and we, actually the light we get, it all comes from the sun. And in the lower planetary systems, sometimes they're described as hellish, but actually it seems to be just one planet that's hellish, and other planets can be very, like, there's more joy and bliss and peace to be experienced. And the sun doesn't reach these planets, and still there is light. And what came to my mind is when we went to Florida for Paramatma's formal initiation, we stopped in Miami, and we stayed the night in Miami, and we booked a hotel by the beach because we wanted to see Miami Beach. And it was night, and we went to the beach, and there was no light, there was no moon, there was no light shining, and still we could see everything just from the town, the city, and the light that effulges from the city and reflects on the clouds. It was a light. And I remember being there and thinking, perhaps that's how the light is in the lower planets. And it was quite a far out experience, like a soft light. I felt sheltered in that dark light. So all these planetary systems and all the different entities that live in these planets, we get an insight here, and it's also described that we have probably wandered through all of these species at one point. So we perhaps at some point we were a monkey-shaped, what is it? A monkey-shaped Kimpurusha, or we were a ghost, or a lunatic, or a goblin, or an angel,
Or jinn.
or a jinn.
There is also jinn.
Yes, there's a jinn. Or a living entity born from perspiration. And I'm saying this because I was curious what to get an example, and Yogeshwar looked up. Okay, living entities born from perspiration, and there was a conversation between Srila Prabhupada and Hayagriva.
Yes.
Hayagriva. Someone, and they asked, so what is a living entity born from perspiration? And Srila Prabhupada responded something, and then there was a question back, and Srila Prabhupada said, yeah, you don't understand because you have a dull mind.
Cow gunk in your brain.
You have cow dung in your brain. And I thought, oh yeah, that's I have a dull mind. What is that? So apparently some germs can come out, or they use perspiration to form the body. So that's interesting. So we wandered through all these, and at this point we have a human form of life, and I was connecting with appreciation for this human form of life, reading this verse and also the purport, because in this form I get to practice Attato Brahmacikasa. I can ask myself, who am I? Why am I here? And not just ask myself, because I asked myself this question from a very small child, and I didn't get the responses, and so I stopped asking the question because it was frustrating. And by stopping, looking back, when I stopped asking these questions, my consciousness started to close down, and my interest in life, my liveliness started to be covered. And yeah, so, and still I got directed somehow to meet Krishna's friends and Srila Prabhupada, and be encouraged again to ask that question, and not just ask it, I also get responses that satisfy my mind, my intellect, and also soothe my emotional distress and my physical distress, and give me meaning and purpose. So that's special. And not just that, not just ask these questions and search responses, also to understand that asking these questions, that's not the end. Becoming conscious is not the end. That's the place where we can start to decide where we want to put our service. So who do we serve? Who do I serve? And so I learned about devotional service, and I get to experience devotional service, and that's a blessing. yeah, and I was just like considering, okay, so these 14 planetary systems, all these living entities, and there's just one system where we get this chance to realize God and actually go back to God. Why not? Why not? I think it's Bhaktivinoda Thakur who says, why not give just this one lifetime to serving God and to glorifying God? Like, we've had millions of life. Why not? Like, what is one life? Why not give this life to serving God? And I mean, it's not just one life. It also shows the meaning of one life, so the value of one life to do this experiment of serving God and experiencing the results. Yeah, so that's some of my process around this verse. And I was like further I continued to consider. So Srila Prabhupada ends the purport with, one should try to be free from prison life and go back home, back to Godhead. That is the real goal for all types of living entities. And I've been contemplating on that, also related to reading Chaitanya Charitamrita. We're reading about the cleansing of the Gundicha temple. And what struck me there is that it gives like another perspective. So I can do something to clean my heart. Like, I also learned about pulling the weeds in the heart, and so there's things I can do to clean my heart. And actually what I get from the cleansing of Gundicha temple is that I am actually limited to clean my heart. I that's so such a freeing perspective for me. Like, so I can endeavor and give my best, and yet I'm limited in cleaning my heart. And yet there is the Maha Mantra, the holy name, which has the capacity to clean my heart. And that's what did I want to say about that? Yeah, so what I can do is I can chant the names of God and become more, give my energy to that, use my body, take care of my body so that it's strong to chant the names of God. And that cleanses my heart. And also, it not just cleanses my heart, it also pacifies the mind. And that's very attractive for me. to have a peaceful mind. And what also came up for me is how Krishna finds ways, like, even if we have one little desire to understand him, he finds ways to come to us and to speak to us and to attract us. And recently I heard two funny stories related to that. Someone who comes to our Bhakti Sangha, she said, she came to me and she said, I have to tell you a story. And she said, the other day, like, she works for a factory where they produce the LP recorders, you know, the LP. I know that we have CDs, yes, they use the LP. Yeah,
the black ones.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so they produce the recorder. And what she does, she does the needles. So anyway, she's into this music, and one of her colleagues, who is like a punk rock person and like lives in a filthy place, and just invited her because he has the best quality LP player. And so she said, okay, so one day she said, okay, I'm just going to go there and do something I don't usually do, like go to this place. And I know there will be alcohol and all this, and so she went there like ready and then she said, so I arrived and we had something to eat, and then the housemate came home from this colleague and he was drunk, and he came in and he started to speak to her about Krishna and Bhagavad Gita and the Puranas, and she was laughing like that there's no way for her to get away from Krishna, even if she consciously decides to do something else, Krishna comes in some way. So I thought that's a funny example of Krishna's humor, and also pacifying. Like if we have some little spark of desire, Krishna will continue to come to us. So I will read the verse again. No, I will read it at the end. It's a very long verse. I want to hear your comments, questions, corrections, whatever.
I appreciated your class very much, and you made like so many points. So I don't think I will get to all. I was trying to put some like mental notes, but then I couldn't focus, so I forget my mental notes. But like what struck me is like the no, like you were speaking about the no control, like how much little control we have, like not even like to clear our heart or like anything. And I was thinking, like Yogeshwara and I, we are going to the adoption seminar, and we had to watch some movies. Like it's a part of the seminar to watch some movies. And one of the movie is about triplets. They were born triplets, like the similar, like the clones triplets. And they were separated at birth, like they went for adoption, and they didn't know about each other's existence. They separated them as a part of some psychological experiment. And then like completely accidentally, they stumbled upon each other when they were 20 years old. And what was really interesting was like they had like so much like similar history. Like at 16, they all went wrestling, and like, there was like so much of like they were just like programmed, like the body, the same genetic body was like programmed to do the same thing. They even went to same college. That's how they met.
Wow.
And then they like make a thing out of it that they were separated for this experiment, and other twins that were separated for the same experiment found each other, and it was the same thing. Like they were the two girls that were both studying movie. And I was thinking like, wow, this is really crazy. Like let's say when I started to ride horses when I was 12, I thought like that's that's like my cool idea. And then if I find my triplets somewhere, they're like, yeah, we ride horses too, It's just like that's like I think I control my life so much, and I'm making like my decisions and go for my desires. But it's just like all already given, obviously, in that movie, it seems like. So it's like so little control, even like I think I control my desires. And probably those are desires that came from the previous life, but still, like there is not really much of anything.
Wow, that's an impressive example, and for me it brings out this point of what I understand from you, like the desire, or not even we don't even have control over our desires, or we think we have, or we think I have such a great idea. It's maybe not even our idea.
It's like all the ideas, intelligence, everything comes from Krishna or from Paramatma. That's like reminding us what we wanted to do. And it really struck me how much like same things they had during their childhood and young adult. And another thing you mentioned that struck me was about, like you said something about, how you like you realize how you hate your body when you go to autoimmune disease, and how you are like you had a process about learning to like care for your body and not hate it. So that was I like that point. I think I'm somewhere at the hate the body platform. or maybe like slowly coming to like maybe I could appreciate it. But I like the point that you made about it's a gift, like it's still a gift from Krishna, and it's like perfect. It's perfect for the self-realization if you want to use it that way. And also it's a human body, so that's great. It's not like the bug born from perspiration. So yeah, I appreciated that.
Like you appreciated the point, like because you also see yourself in this process of learning to accept your body and appreciate.
And I can really see how I'm like creating like disease by not wanting the body. And it's still like I cannot just decide like, oh, let's love the body from now on. I guess I could, but it doesn't seem as easy.
It doesn't feel like you could make that choice.
Yeah. So I wonder how diseased this body will need to become for me to get it.
Thank you for sharing.
Hare Krishna. Thank you for your class.
I could.
And what was interesting for me, like the point you made, like you started to like ask the question, like, who am I? And your like vision kind of got smaller. Like, yeah, like I think like the similar thing happened to me. Like I remember as a child, I was like, oh, that's like interesting. Like everyone is dying and no one is caring. So let's play this game. Like pretend that the death will not come. Yeah, so I resonate with that. And it's interesting. Like once we like stop asking the questions of like the purpose of the life, like the purpose, like then I get to be like entangled in some like short-term goal, or just to fit into some group, or to gratify something, or to imitate someone. That's interesting. And you mentioned the groups like the who is crazy. Right, and it's so like, yeah, like my understanding of Prabhupada is like he's fighting against like this putting ourselves or others in the boxes of the groups, because like even if I look at the like history of the 20th centuries, the most cruel acts were like done when the group got higher importance than the individual, like the Second World War, like the Jews and like the groups, right? Like it's like fight against the groups, like one group against other group. Yes. So yeah, and like that's like also kind of, as I was listening to some discussion of like mundane philosophy, and it seems that those who are like sort of sincere but don't like have the, let's say, divine knowledge given to them, it's like they are intuitively going to the, like the core is the responsibility, because you started with a responsibility, like individual responsibility over like the identification with the group. And you can observe like the societies that fail, that usually what happens, that the interests of the group become more than the responsibility and integrity of the individual. So it's like practically related.
Yeah.
I like the I just want to say that I like the modern religion that you made, like vaccinated and non-vaccinated, and you are crazy, and you are crazy, you are going to die, you are going to die too. And so yeah, so It's a modern religion
Mhm.
for atheists.
Yeah, then there is plenty of research that just if you divide the people into groups, like you have class of students, let's say, and you say you are group A, you are group B, then the group A starts to mock the group B, and the group B starts to think that they are better than the group A, like without like anything.
Yeah, I was A at primary school and high school, and I still think that A is better. It's true, I really do think that A was better because I was in A.
Yes, Prabhupada says sometimes it's like we are Krishnas, like we belong to Krishna. That's like the group.
Mm.
Hmm.
Yeah, I find that an interesting point about, like this tendency to think that we're better than others, or we're more than others, or we're like our group is better, or like just with a little bit of just like just this verse reading about how many living entities there are, and how I just get how limited I am in understanding and knowing these things. And so how, and it's a question I have, how can I go to this arrogance again and again and again? It's just, that's crazy too.
Yeah, like when Krishna sees Agasura, so it's like open, like snake with the big open mouth. So Krishna sees Agasura and he's thinking like, wow, like my illusory energy is like really amazing. Like Krishna says, stands in like wonder. He's like, wow. So even Krishna is like fascinated what his material illusory energy can do. So you are fascinated too. Like, wow, how can I like always go there? It's fascinating.
Yeah, how I can go to wanting to control and thinking that I actually can control. I had an interesting insight in this Ayurveda course I did, like looking at the different, we learned about the elements and how we are influenced, our body is influenced, also our mind and emotions are influenced by the elements. And I understood that a lot of my disease comes because there's too much air and ether element. So I was meditating on that, and I took a walk in the forest, and I was seeing all these dry leaves and all the like the wind, the autumn wind. I was thinking it's just air and ether everywhere. And I'm trying to control and make sure I don't have too much air. So
yeah, it's a little difficult in fall in Switzerland.
And it was a beautiful realization, actually, because I understood also that air and ether, they have wonderful qualities of like creativity and visionary, and instead of fighting that element, I can also like, set the sails and go with these elements and then find balance in that, and then I don't need to control. But yeah, I want to control the wind and the ether. Malini?
Hi, Krishna. Thank you for the class and the flow. I really like the flow of everything you expressed. And I was thinking of some of what you expressed about, we are not free. We are really not free. And all our action kind of, as long as we are in a material world, under the clutch of the material energy, they are directed by the three modes of material nature. And then yesterday I was reading, some of the teaching of Lord Kapila to his mother. And it was interesting for me to really absorb myself in what he described about the self-realized soul. Because the self-realized soul, from that description, from that place, I speak about yogis, he sees and like his life is still, the way he sees his life is like a result of his past activities. So he's a self-realized soul, and his life is a result of the past activities. And it's still, in a sense, under the mode of material nature. However, the self-realized soul is allowing that to be moved by the Lord. So the self-realized soul, it's not, it stops or it goes in a different direction. It's like all the movement of the activities of the living entities. The self-realized soul sees himself like in those movements. However, he sees that it's all moved by the Lord and nobody else. Yeah, was just interesting.
Yeah, that's beautiful. What I like. So what I understand, what you're sharing is that the self-realized soul is also part of material nature, and is also, and he actually sees that it's Krishna behind it. It's God moving this, like, and he's not entangled in it or disturbed by it. It's all a bliss. Wow, what an amazing way to go through life. Thank you for sharing. So I will read the verse again.
You will finish in the next hour.
O King, know from me that all living entities are created by the Supreme Lord according to their past deeds. This includes Brahma and his sons like Daksha, the periodical heads like Vaivasvata Manu, the demigods like Indra, Chandra, and Varuna, the great sages like Prithu, Vyasa, and Vasishta, the inhabitants of Pitriloka and Siddhaloka, the Charanas, Gandharvas, Vidyadharas, Asuras, Yakshas, Kinnaras, and angels, the serpentines, the monkey-shaped Kimpurushas, the human beings, the inhabitants of Matriloka, the demons, Pishachas, ghosts and spirits, lunatics and evil spirits, the good and evil stars, the goblins, the animals in the forest, the birds, the household animals, the reptiles, the mountains, the moving and standing living entities, the living entities born from embryos, from eggs, from perspiration, and from seeds, and all others, whether they be in the water, land, or sky, in happiness and distress, or in mixed happiness and distress. All of them, according to their past deeds, are created by the Supreme Lord. Srimad Bhagavatam ki.
Jai.
Prabhupada ki.
Jai.
Hare Krishna, Malini and Eze.